I suppose the place we should start is at the beginning. And perhaps, we can even look at this as we're entering into, or we're somewhat through the generation when we're going to be looking at skin and skincare other than just simply the application of topicals, and look at this in a more holistic manner, meaning that the health, the appearance, the vitality of the skin is going to be intimately connected to everything else that we're doing. And I know that you're a fan of this. So I think we're going to really have a lot of fun with the conversation today. So just like we would have with any other part of our health, with skincare, we really need to build up our foundation. And I spoke a little bit about this last night. And Jane, I know that you talk to your clients about this, but if we want to have healthy skin, we have to have a healthy body. So this means we need to have a clean diet. We need to supplement where needed. We need to exercise, drink plenty of water, of course, get proper sleep, avoid things like alcohol, excessive amounts of coffee, and other things, avoid drug use if possible. All of these things are going to have an impact on the health and the vitality of the skin. So first thing I would recommend before even looking at patches is take a look at everything in your life and try to build as strong of a foundation as possible. So that being said, let's take a look at maybe where things can start to go wrong. And where we would look first would be in the mitochondria. So a very simple way to talk and think about skincare is going to be based on the idea that every cell in the body, and the skin included, is going to be dependent upon the ability of the cells to make energy and the ability of the cells to communicate with their environment. And if we lose either of those two things, the body begins to die. And you have all types of health disorders that result as a consequence. So the first thing is, let's make sure that the cells are producing adequate amounts of energy. If the cell produces enough energy, then we're going to be able to synthesize new proteins and repair damaged tissue so we can protect the collagen. And as we know, collagen is the most abundant protein in the body. But the ability of the cells to manufacture collagen is going to be directly related to the ability of the cells to manufacture energy, and this is done in the mitochondria. So that there's perhaps a few things that we could talk about from a nutritional point of view and from the perspective of patches that will facilitate an increased output of energy in the mitochondria. Secondly, we need to protect the skin. And this is where we're going to maybe spend some time talking about glutathione, carnosine, and eon. Because if we can manage oxidative stress and inflammatory stress, we're going to be able to protect every cell in the body, including the skin. And then when we look at maybe some advanced things like stem cell activation, of course, this becomes very important, especially if we have any type of scarring, any detrimental damage to the skin. The ability to manage inflammation and then rebuild the skin with new and healthy stem cells is going to be very critical. So that's kind of like a sweeping overview, and we can dive into any one of those areas that you like.
What would you suggest to do something for just the diffused redness? And
so if we're just going to focus on skincare, maybe a good way to look at this is that this would be a commitment to a program that would last a number of months, and that we're not trying to just get simple cosmetic benefits. We're looking at improving the overall health of the skin and the health of the body so that there can be long-term benefits. So let's look at this maybe in stages and then over a period of a number of months. So a first step that I think would be very useful is detoxification. Now, detoxification is an umbrella term, and there's actually a surprising number of detox programs that are available that I think most people aren't really aware of. When we think about detox in our community, we think about glutathione, but it actually runs quite a bit deeper than that. So for example, when you're elevating glutathione, it's a chelating agent, and it's going to attach to heavy metals in the body like mercury and help facilitate the removal of those heavy metals. This is really important. Not only can it improve the appearance of the skin, but it's also going to make the liver work better. It'll make the thyroid work better if there's any accumulated mercury in the thyroid, make your immune system work better by removing mercury and heavy metals from the thymus gland. So detoxification with glutathione would be a very important first step. And this could be something that I would say would be a minimum of 2 weeks when you're starting, but you could certainly do it for 30 days. Other forms of detoxification would involve removing plastics from the body. I know this is kind of gross to think about. Oh, gee, you know, we're drinking water sometimes from plastic bottles, and those plastics can accumulate in the body. It's good to go on detox to remove those, and we do that with oxygen therapies, oxygen radicals like hydrogen peroxide and ozone. There's parasites that can be in the body, and if you're a sushi lover like I am, it's certainly possible that you could get a parasite from eating raw fish. So it's a good idea to go through a parasite cleanse maybe once a year, and you can do this for, let's say, 30 days with some common herbs. There's a liver cleanse that you can do, and also removal of any gallstones or bile when it accumulates into the liver and forms soft pellets, which would be a precursor to gallstones. You can go through a 3-day flush that will remove thousands, maybe 1 or 2 thousands of these little pellets from the body. And this is going to help the liver work better. And that is actually going to ultimately improve the appearance of the skin, because we're improving the detoxification pathways. And the liver is principally going to be where most of the glutathione is in the body. And of course, the liver is a filter. So we get the filtration mechanism working, and the skin is going to be a lot healthier. So detoxification for the first month would be really important. And secondly, another part to this would be getting inflammation and oxidative stress under control. We're actually starting a new study, and it's going to involve the use of the Eon patch, in which we're looking at an entirely new technique for reducing not only inflammatory stress, but oxidative stress as well. So, you know, first keep in mind that oxidative stress and inflammatory stress are necessary. They're part of the healing process. And when we're injured, the oxidative chemicals that are released at the site of the injury are going to suppress the formation of bacteria that can create infection. It's if those oxidative chemicals are chronic and they hang around a lot longer than they should, then they start to damage healthy tissue. The same thing is true with inflammatory stress. Inflammation is necessary to tear down old, damaged, or dead tissue, but as we age, our ability to remove those inflammatory chemicals begins to decline. So a product like Eon is a really excellent method for getting the inflammation under control. And this is going to ultimately help to protect the skin from damage. I should mention that Alavita we find is an excellent method for reducing oxidative stress and ultimately protecting the skin. So I would say, just long story short, in the world of patches, Eon and Alavita and glutathione are going to help facilitate detoxification, clean up the body, and protect the body from inflammatory and oxidative stress. there's a lot of other steps here in the foundation, but in the patch world, that's what I'd recommend.
I want you to hit though real quick, David, because when we talked earlier, a couple of weeks back, you gave a great study, and I know I have a couple acne professionals on this call. And would you please quote the study about glutathione over a month usage and the statistics of repair and healing?
Okay, so you're referring to the acne study that we did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, I'll be happy to cover that, but there's an asterisk next to this so we can stay out of trouble with the FDA and the FTC. We did this study with a clinical lab in New Jersey, and this is going back to maybe around 2008 now. And we started to get reports from people that were using the glutathione patch and having remarkable reductions in acne. So we thought we would study this clinically. And what we found was that in using the glutathione patch, there was a 68% reduction in the appearance of acne in 2 weeks. We were in the mid 80% of reduction in acne in 3 weeks and over 90% reduction in acne after 4 weeks. Now, acne is, of course, a medical condition. And when we went to speak with our attorney about this, they said, well, you're going to have a problem with the FDA and the FTC. First, you'll have to get your patch regulated as a drug because the FDA is only going to recognize a drug as treating a medical condition like acne. And then you're going to have a problem with the FTC on making these types of claims. So we decided not to market the glutathione patch that way, despite the fact that, you know, there's a massive need for this. But the fact of the matter is we did show the correlation between elevated levels of glutathione and in skin health and acne. By the way, just to do a plug, I have a product training coming up on December 16th, where I'm going to discuss the role that glutathione plays in stem cells. There's a very interesting and surprising connection between stem cells and glutathione. So I'm going to be presenting that information on our product training on December 16th. But in any case, yeah, I would say there's a number of natural treatments for acne, depending on what type of nutrients people are ingesting. Foods or supplements that are rich in vitamin A, vitamin D, zinc can all be incredibly important in helping to reduce acne. And then, of course, using glutathione for its benefits in detoxification and also as a antibacterial.
Which patches were you talking about that were really good to work with the leaky gut? Because I'd have to say that's one of the biggest leading causes we see today.
Sure. So the first thing, again, you know, this all comes back to building the foundation of the body and getting the diet in check and exercise and so forth. So we'll just say that that would be a given. What we did find in our research is that X39 does have a rather remarkable effect on the gut. We do see that copper peptide, because of its ability to act as a gene modulator, it will help reset the immune system and get the immune system to be more active and be more responsive in the body. That might be a fair way to say it. So as a result, we see improvement in the thymus and improvement in the gut. And that's not surprising because this is where the immune cells are going to be made. So first thing is I might recommend use of the X39 patch. I would also recommend use of glutathione because it's neuroprotective, it's detoxifying, and when someone has leaky gut, it can cause infiltration of toxins into the blood. So drinking lots of water, using oxygen therapies, elevating glutathione can all help to facilitate detoxification of these things. So that would be among many other things. I would also recommend orally aloe vera, and there's some aloe vera extracts that can be beneficial. in helping to facilitate removal of toxins from the intestine and helping to normalize the activity of the gut.
Would you recommend the X39 for people with just basic digestive issues or intestinal issues or people with sensitive stomachs?
I would. I might also recommend the Eon patch and applying that over the ileocecal valve. So this would be if you go, let's say, this is an easy point to find. If you go from the belly button and you kind of go on a diagonal line, 45-degree angle from the belly button towards the waistline, and you go about 2 to 3 inches, there's going to be a point there. If you apply some deep pressure, there's going to be a point that people get to that can be very sensitive, and that's the ileocecal valve. And if you were to apply either the glutathione patch or the Eon patch over at that point, it would typically be used for something like acid reflux. That valve can shut close, force acid back up the body, and now we get acid reflux. So that point, and also acupuncture point, stomach 36, is always associated with acid reflux. But from the point of view of the gut and any type of associated inflammation, that would really be an excellent point to apply one of the patches to. So you could apply X39 behind the neck and then Eon or glutathione to that point.
Would you just say the X39 is one of the best patches to start with, or is there something else you would include with that?
Well, many of our products are going to have benefits for the skin, but through different pathways. So if someone, and this of course is all going to come down to budget, and people are certainly free to try and rotate between the different patches and see what works best for them. So the example that we're using, first they could start with Eon and glutathione, or glutathione and Alavita during the first month, get that detox, protect the cells from damage, and then move on to something like X39. So that would certainly be a possibility. Carnosine is also an interesting possibility. A little background on carnosine is that it's the most powerful natural anti-glycation nutrient that has been discovered. And I often like to refer to carnosine as the most valuable nutrient that most people aren't taking. Athletes, of course, they know about it today because beta-alanine supplements and carnosine supplements have become more widely used in pre-workout and post-workout formulas. But I first started to become interested in carnosine back in 2005 and 2006 when I saw research studies coming out that when you give mammals, and in these experiments they were mice and rats, a daily supplement of carnosine, that their lifespan was increasing 30 to 40%. And that's all they were doing. Now, the really cool thing about this, I mean, you know, I wouldn't mind living to 130 or 140. You know, that's not a bad starting point. We were talking about much longer lifespans last night. But the really cool thing about that is that the mice did not age until the very end of their life. So carnosine has this incredible property of basically keeping you young throughout most of your life. So, you know, what's going on there? Well, there's multiple mechanisms. But let's talk about anti-glycation as it relates to the skin. So first, so everyone knows what we're talking about, glycation is a process in which sugar is going to bind with proteins. And this is going to, especially people that have type 1 or type 2 diabetes, are going to be especially prone to glycation because of the elevated blood sugar levels. There's many reasons to get your blood sugar under control. Diabetes is only one of them, but high blood sugar levels are also going to degrade the quality of the skin, and they leave people prone to diabetic or idiopathic neuropathy, which will destroy the peripheral nerves and in some cases even lead to amputation. So again, going back to diet and exercise, those are excellent methods for getting blood sugar under control. But there, nutritionally speaking, there are many ways to control blood sugar. And we see that with copper peptide, with glutathione and carnosine, they all facilitate control over blood sugar, and in some cases in very, very dramatic ways. I would say that I used to think the combination of glutathione and carnosine was remarkable at controlling blood sugar, but then when we introduced X39, it just so dramatically passed what we were seeing with the combination of glutathione and carnosine. But getting back to carnosine just for a moment, it's one of its methods of action is that it does act like an antioxidant, but it's unusual in that it can protect the telomeres from shortening. And this is how it increases longevity. But telomere shortening is also linked to inflammatory disease and autoimmune disorders. So by protecting the telomeres, you can protect the body from inflammation and from autoimmune disorders. I'm not going to make a medical claim, though, of course. But with respect to glycation, when somebody has high blood sugar levels and it can bind to a protein and form glycation, this can result in oxidative and inflammatory stress, and as a result, damage the skin. So by utilizing carnosine, we can reduce the occurrence and protect the skin from damage. So carnosine is, depending on a person's overall health, that might be something that someone would want to consider. Plus, they get all the extra benefits of improved cognitive function, improved heart function, and improved strength and stamina.
I want you to discuss heat shock. And I know that I did get a little note that maybe this is more advanced.
Well, I certainly have quite a few thoughts about that. First of all, temperature in biology is a really interesting thing. There are things called heat shock proteins, and there are even heat shock antioxidants, and they're incredibly powerful. So berberine, for example, is a very powerful anti-aging nutrient that is created in nature through heat shock and heat stress. Another one would be astaxanthin. Astaxanthin is as valuable as gold. It's extremely expensive to manufacture. It's produced in algae, and it's made by heat shocking algae. So the algae will release astaxanthin to protect the algae from damage, and this antioxidant has incredible abilities at protecting cells, and human beings can benefit from this. In human biology, of course, we see effects by heating and cooling the body. I was once at Olympic training camp in France. It was an organization called INSEP, and they have a chamber there. And Peter, I'm going to sign you up for this. You go in this chamber, you get in your underwear, you go in at 70 degrees below zero, and you have to do that for about 2 or 3 minutes. So I know you'd be really excited about that. But the benefit is that you get very, very rapid increases in testosterone. And the athletes use this as a natural way to recover. So this is just all to say that the human body will, in fact, respond to extremes in temperature, both hot and cold. And so we need to know how to use this appropriately. So there's a number of ways to facilitate increases in production of collagen and elastin. Elastin, of course, is a little bit trickier. Some people are concerned that if an individual has cancer, prompting the cell to increase elastin can be dangerous. There's some literature that might suggest that elevating elastin production could lead to proliferation of cancer cells. I don't think it's quite that simple. Depends on a number of other factors. But in the area of collagen, first of all, it is very well established that there's an intimate role and relationship between copper peptide and the fibroblasts. So interestingly enough, copper peptide protects the fibroblasts from damage and will help to normalize collagen production. And the most dramatic examples of this we see in the testimonials we receive, where people have gotten burned. They have very, very deep wounds from things like car accidents and other accidents, long-term scars, and these injuries heal. And this is because X39 and copper peptide are able to upregulate the production of collagen from the fibroblasts. Now, we of course also need to have the raw materials in our body, and so things like collagen supplements are gonna have their value. I definitely recommend vitamin C, and any number of ways of getting that, either through IV, let's say once a week, or just simple oral vitamin C, 1,000 milligrams once or twice a day can be okay. But vitamin C is going to play a role in regenerating and restoring collagen in the body. There are any number of other nutrients, milk peptides, for example. Whey protein plays a role in increasing collagen production in the body. So that in and of itself is a pretty fair and large topic. But yes, for the purpose of our conversation, X39 would be the go-to patch for increasing collagen production and protecting the fibroblasts from thermal shock.
And do you feel that the X39 is a great go-to to start them off on, or would you think, going back to the glutathione is just a master antioxidant?
So I'm actually going to recommend the Eon patch because it is a broad spectrum anti-inflammatory. We actually did a study. I'll share the results with you. We haven't published them because the research is ongoing, but we did a 6-month study of our patches, and I can't tell you which. I might be able to tell you which, but I can't tell you what we were studying because that's secret right at the moment. But we did this 6-month study prior to the pandemic, and we got spectacular results. And I think it's fair to say this was in the field of anti-aging. We went back and did the same study with a larger group, but the study started after the pandemic. And you could see it was just like flipping a switch. After the pandemic, the results were not as good. There was a drastic difference, as a matter of fact, between pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. And when we had exit interviews and we talked to people, we found out that people were under tremendous emotional stress because of the pandemic, and this altered the results and it altered the outcome. Now, we were, in this particular case, we were studying, we weren't studying the Eon patch, we were studying another patch. And we were looking at a very specific structure within the cell. And we wanted to see that if we could normalize the function of this structure within the cell. And we found out pre-pandemic we could, post-pandemic we could not. And it all came down to elevated levels of oxidative and inflammatory stress. So this is just to say that any number of different factors in a person's life can affect their overall health, especially emotional stresses. And with people being concerned about what's happening with COVID, people being under a lot of financial stress, this in turn is going to create this inflammatory stress. So a really good way to deal with that would be with the Eon patch, amongst other things.
When you talk about the oxidative stress, would you match the Eon with the Alavita then?
I would. In the patching world, that's what I would do. I will say that nutritionally, it is extremely difficult to reduce oxidative stress. We're currently in a clinical study. We haven't started it yet. We're just going to contract, but we are going to be using the Eon patch and something else in combination as a way to reduce oxidative and inflammatory stress. And the initial projections based on pilot work show that this technique will reduce oxidative stress by an incredible 80%. And that gets oxidative stress into a normal range. We need some oxidative stress. We don't want to eliminate all of it, but we want to reduce the oxidative stress that's associated with aging. So I'm hoping maybe about a year from now, we could release that data and release a product as a result.
And I think that's really exciting about what you've created here and where it's going to play a major role in the future of skincare and with skin therapists.
Yeah, another way to think of this, and I'm going to give people a little bit of hope here, and that is one of the things that clinical studies show is that this is not going to sound like a good thing, but bear with me just a second, is that when we have elevated levels of oxidative stress and inflammation, it can lead to breaks in the DNA. And that, of course, is not a good thing. We don't want to create mutations and DNA damage, and we don't want to create damage to our genome. But the really exciting thing is that if we keep our body's levels of glutathione elevated, it will actually repair DNA before the cell goes through cell division. So this means that, we can have some stressful moments in our life. We're all going to go through, long days, having emotional stress, all these kind of things that can occur. But if we're paying attention and we are in a regular regimen with our health protocols, we're keeping our glutathione elevated, we're managing our inflammatory stress, it's going to help protect ourselves in some pretty dramatic ways.
What can you explain that a little bit? Because I know a lot of people do the LED beds or they do LED lights.
Well, I mean, this happens to be, one of my primary areas of study, so I hope I can address it okay. Yeah, so some of the wavelengths of light that we look at in our research are going to be 630 nanometer, 660 nanometer, 780 nanometer, down more towards the infrared. I think it's fair to say that in light therapy, those wavelengths in red, orange band, and infrared band are very, very well studied. But as we get into green wavelengths and blue wavelengths, there's less good data, and that's for a variety of reasons. Of course, infrared is going to penetrate a little bit better through the cell. But the connection really here is that infrared and 630 and 660 are going to have direct actions on the mitochondria. And we have to look at the electron transport chain and increases in cytochrome C oxidase, which is going to be the enzyme which is elevated during light therapy. So copper peptide's role in light therapy is rather interesting for a number of reasons, but I think suffice it to say that ultimately Laurent Picard, I have been in communication with him, and he's a brilliant scientist. He deserves a Nobel Prize. Ultimately, what it comes down to is copper peptide's ability to modulate the genes, reset those genes to a younger state, and now everything in the body works well. When we're born, when we're young and healthy, let's say from 25 under, before the aging process really starts, our bodies can interface with light in a perfect manner. It's no mistake that when people go out in the sun, they feel more energetic, emotionally they're in a better mood. This is not purely psychological, it's physiological. I had once had a conversation with Dr. Carl Merritt, who's a very well-known biomedical engineer, and he had said that in his experiments, they recorded that as much as 30% of the energy being manufactured in the mitochondria was coming directly from sunlight. So in people that live in places like Seattle, where they're not getting very much sunlight, that there is a direct reason as far as why they feel less energetic, and you find a coffee shop on every corner. It's because literally they don't have an ample supply of light to produce electrons in the cell, and generate more energy. So yeah, this is all to say that if we elevate our copper peptide levels, the cells will begin to look, feel, act like younger, healthier cells. And this will facilitate the transfer of energy from light through the electron transport chain and ultimately increase total energy output in the mitochondria.
I know that a lot of people want to understand. And so when we activate a peptide or we're activating an antioxidant, how is that patch doing that?
Okay, so here might be an easy way to think about this. If we were to take a laser, and it doesn't matter what the wavelength is, let's just say 660 nanometer, right? We're going to get orange light off of that. You can think of this as just being a sine wave. And if we could hear that wave, it would be something like a hum. Now, you compare that to a musical instrument. So a trumpet has a very distinct sound, a flute has a very distinct sound, and a piano has a very distinct sound. So we can very easily differentiate which instrument is which. And so these instruments are producing complex waveforms. And this is the single biggest difference between traditional light therapy and LifeWave patches, is that the patches are informational and they utilize wavelengths of light, but they utilize complex waveforms of light when they're stimulating the skin. And this is how the patches, using light and by blending different wavelengths, are going to be able to signal the production of glutathione, signal the production of copper peptide, or whatever they're designed to do. So that might be one way of thinking about it.
We talk a lot about the two big patches would be X39 and Alavita. And then would you say Eon or would you say glutathione?
I would say Eon for sure. Yeah, when we look at any type of species that has extraordinarily long life, the one thing that you see is that there's no oxidative or inflammatory stress. In mollusks, for example, that have been found that live to be over 500 years old, they still look very young and healthy. And it's because of there's no oxidative or inflammatory stress. So the ability to reset the cells to a younger, healthier state and control oxidative and inflammatory stress should not be underestimated. So those three patches I would definitely put at the top.